Okay, so let's see. We're in Arizona. We're in Cave Creek, Arizona. It's February 2022. What horses do you have with you right now?
I have Beef, coming 3-year-old, Dove, my true love, and Shooter, who's kind of crippled right now, but he's going to get better, and Boozy. So last time I was on the road last fall, last time you saw me in Spanaway, Boozy was still in the snaffle bit.
You put him in the
I put
Hackamore.
him in the Hackamore
That's
at
right.
that clinic, yeah.
That's right. That's always fun. I quite like to watch that. Okay, so that will lead us right into the filter of experience and the difference between just having theoretical information and watching the process happen, like what we were talking about before, and how important it's been for me to watch you put horses in the Hackamore. You know, I've driven far to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Because watching it shape up, and then doing it yourself, of course, is...
Well, I mean, you have to kind of at least have an understanding of where you're trying to go. And you'll have that probably mentally before you can physically achieve it, And there'll be some people who never get beyond just really talking a good game, You'll hear them and you'll think, gosh dang, that person sounds really handy. And even to where they're almost intimidating. And then you see them ride and you're like, oh, okay. It's experience. It's a lot of horses. Most people won't be fortunate enough to get on enough horses to really reach their full potential. And sometimes that's just because of life. They would love to, but their life just only allows them to do it a certain amount of time, but I think most people would ride more if when they rode, they really sincerely got joy out of doing it. I think they'd find more time to ride.
And if they weren't afraid.
Yeah, fear can be a hell of a thing. And for some people, it doesn't take much for them to get afraid, and then that burden just seems to grow, and then pretty soon they start finding reasons why not to go ride their horse. And a lot of times, unless they have someone who's pretty handy and knowledgeable, they might not get through it on their own.
That, and so actually the girls and I were talking, Michael and I were talking about that this morning, fear, and learning how to get through something. And something I just thought about the last few days is watching you ride through a little bit of a storm. Just because you don't end up with big ones at this point since I've met you. But the idea that if you can get to where you can put the storm in a teacup, meaning in a finite space, then you can get through it.
Well, that's kind of determined by how early you start addressing things. How far developed is the storm, So doing a little bit less sooner, it generally doesn't amount to too much. But it's funny, the confidence is that's the hardest thing to achieve, and for a lot of people, the easiest thing to lose.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't believe in yourself and what you're doing, that horse knows it. They might not think of it on our terms, but the horse is either he needs to get confident about his environment, so that just basic things, you know, scary things aren't scary anymore. He needs to get confident in you, and then he needs confidence within himself. But if he can't get confident in you, the others don't come.
Say that again.
Now, it's possible that the horse, just through repetition and miles and exposure, that he can get sort of confident in his environment, where he's not scared of a funny looking rock in the pasture when you ride by it, or a dead snag or something. They can get confident in their environment. But if he's not confident in you, he'll never get confident within himself, which is ultimately what you're after, that he feels good about himself. So just those three things, gosh dang. And a lot of people, they're like, well, that all sounds great, but let's just focus on me being confident about myself, because nothing else is possible.
But isn't that the vicious cycle? Because
Yeah,
you
it's
have
a
to be
hell of a
able
thing.
to support the horse so that they
So
are
you become confident you can support horses. That's
Right.
that's really the rub. It really is. But and people deal with things in a different way. Like last spring, that Tito horse, you know, he had some nerve damage in his back, and we talked about that, and had some pinched nerves, and we had been getting along so good. And you saw me rope on him in Texas, and he was good. I was ready to go brand calves on him. Well,
it
anyway,
was really pretty between the two of you.
Well, anyway, that pinched nerve got worse in his back, and one day it just was at the wrong angle, and it hurt him, and he thought I did it to him, and that was the toughest bronc ride of my life.
You want to tell? I haven't heard the whole story.
That was the baddest dude I've ever been on, and you figure
In your whole life?
I'm talking, that's a lot of years, and I've been on a lot of bucking horses. I'm not bragging about it, because they were bucking because I made a mistake, but nevertheless, I have had a lot of experience riding bucking horses, and he was the worst I've ever seen.
Jeez.
And he bucked off my son-in-law pretty quick a couple of years before that, and I think he was hurt then. We think that he maybe did the splits on the ice, because he had some just bad trouble in his SI joint, in his lower back, and his psoas muscles. But anyway, I wish he'd bucked me off sooner. I stayed on quite a bit longer, and then he jumped up in the air, sunfish, and landed on my leg, and really smashed my leg. And it was ugly. But aside from that, I mean, you could split hairs and say, well, he didn't really buck me off, because after about 18, 19 seconds of him bucking, I actually checked out. I just rolled off because I was out of gas. I was beat. So maybe he didn't buck me off, but he was going to. So I call it a win for him. But the point to this is, after he bucked me off, there's a lot of people would be just devastated by this, you know, and it would just shatter their confidence. And I got to thinking about it a few months later, and I didn't really approach it that way, because I thought, I've already seen the worst I've seen in my entire life as far as bucking horses. And technically, I did ride him. He just outlasted me.
I don't know that that's going to give people a lot of comfort.
And it actually made me more confident. It was like, anything else from here on is going to be pretty benign compared to that. So yeah, it actually built my confidence instead of ruining it. But that's because of my experience.
Right.
Now, if a person had something similar to that happen when they first got started, holy crap, they'd be in therapy for years over it, you know. So
maybe it's similar to like a greener rider just riding a little bit of a spook or a little bit of a crow hop or something like that, and they survive it, and they're like, okay,
yeah,
I'm not gonna fall off.
Yeah.
If my horse sneezes.
I've heard some people say before that maybe they fell off and they went,
I didn't die.
yeah, that was actually a good thing, because I just thought that was lethal. Like, if you fell off a horse, that you were going to die. And it actually did help them. They're like, maybe I was a little too emotional about that. I can survive falling off if I don't stay on. So
the idea that seeing a horse through something, just seeing what that looks like, and just speaking from someone who's watched you do it so much, that is how I started to see what the process was, so that then I could go practice that. So I'm going to shut this window because I don't want the traffic noise on the thing. But the next thing I think we should talk about is the what does it look like for a horse to have to, or for a horse to get into a little bit of trouble? I'm thinking in particular these horses that are quiet-ish, quiet-ish, and then because people have maybe not let anything come out, they've babied them so much. Maybe baby's not the right way to say it, but they've tried to preserve the horse's confidence so much that the horse is extremely underexposed. And then,
well, sometimes it's sneaking rides.
Sometimes,
because they so want to avoid trouble, but it's in their interest, not the horse's interest.
We'll talk more about that. Yeah.
So they might say, well, I don't want to do this or that because he could get afraid, and I love him, and I just don't want him to ever get afraid. Well, that is a load of crap, because in order for a horse to get confidence, he needs to get exposed to some things that he lacks confidence about, and he may have to get afraid in order to get sure. And it's not that having the horse get afraid, that's not a goal. It's just part of the journey right in the middle before you get to the other side, to where he realizes you're trying to show him something that he doesn't need to be afraid of. But just to hide from that and say, I'm not going to do that because I think my horse is going to get afraid, well, then you're going to be one of those people that are stealing rides your whole life. Trouble will find you. You cannot hide from trouble indefinitely. You might think you can by just sneaking around them. It's only a matter of time. And it's the fear the dull horse.
We don't say that enough.
Fear
but
the
yeah.
dull horse. The horse that's sensitive, that's handy, that's obedient, that's not a dirty word. That has confidence, that's the horse that I'm going to trust my life with. Not a horse that's going around like he's in a coma.
Yeah. And it's funny to think of the people that, well, just that I've been around, that are operating, and I've done this too, operating on my horse's good graces. Like, I want to be friends with my horses.
Sure. Who
So, yeah, so I want them to come hang out. This one, we know we're hanging out with the right people. Who doesn't? Because our people do want to be friends with their horses.
Yeah.
But, and so, if, like, let's say the average person has 1 or 2 horses or something like that, and we get to be, the horses do learn to really quite like us.
Yeah.
But, so they'll do a lot of stuff for us, I guess, is and when I met you, I remember that I knew something wasn't right. Although my horses would do a lot of cool things for me, but because they wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
But I had no ability to support them. So they were the ones that brought all the support to the table. And I didn't have anything to give them when the chips were down. So I had to make sure that the chips were always up. Is that the right way to say it? I guess, yeah. You see what I'm saying? And then you showed me that, look, it's not doing the horses a favor by leaving all of that in there. And that is not a benefit to them. And I knew that because even though we could do walk, trot, canter, bridleless, walk, trot, canter, gallop, bridleless, do all these things, it still wasn't right, because you're just inevitably going to run into something that they need support with.
Yeah, and even just, that topic, a form of that, Bill Dorrance and I talked about that years ago. It got to be, for a while, a real marketing thing with some of these professionals riding the horse bridleless. And Bill Dorrance would never say anything real controversial. He just wasn't that kind of guy, you know. But so Bill and I were watching a video of a person riding around doing a little demo without a bridle, and he didn't say anything. I kind of prompted him. I said, "Hey Bill, what'd you think of that?" He said, "Well, that was really interesting." He said, I wonder if they could do it with a spade bit on their horse." And then he was done talking about it. But there's a big difference between, as you know, a horse that is, for lack of a better term, classically trained as a bridle horse, and a horse that just does some neat little tricks. I mean, like we were talking about today, you get out in the pasture and you're gathering bulls, and you know you're in rough country. What are you going to do? Hang your bridle on the fence then and go gather bulls because maybe you got a rope something and tie them down? Where is it used other than it being a parlor trick? And the other part is, I think it's a terrible influence on green riders, because God knows they have a hard enough time staying on these damn things as it is. Take away all their control, because they're not going to have the feel to be able to do it, a lot of folks. And then on top of that, tell them to do it bareback. Well, orthopedic surgeons are probably watching this saying, "Shut up, Buck. You're cutting into our revenue stream here."
Yes.
It's ridiculous. It's just tricks, you know. I'm into something that's practical that you can use somewhere.
Well, yes, and I love riding my horse bareback and bridleless, as you know, because it's fun. But mostly I just like to sit up there. It's cool, right?
All little kids go through that stage with their pony in the backyard,
Right.
riding around mom's clothesline, you know. That's a kind of a kid's game that, you know, some people get off on, and that's great. That's fine. But there's a big world of knowledge beyond
A big world.
just doing that.
And I think what we can offer the horse, because again, then the horse is bringing everything to the table for us. That doesn't mean we can support a horse. In fact, you're really not going to be able to support a horse if anything happens.
No, you're going to fall off.
You know? So then you're relying on the fact that everything is set up so that maybe the horse has just been exposed enough that they're confident in lots of different environments, or, you know, they're just generally confident on that day. But will you talk just a little bit about, I mean, does every horse have to get afraid to some degree? I would say yes, but
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
they're horses.
It's just some are going to work through those things quicker than others. There are some that will just, they'll get confident in a hurry. You maybe don't have to show them too many times a certain thing that they don't need to be afraid of it. And certain horses will retain it better and longer than others. And some, you'll feel like you're starting over every day for a while. And then you can't get all emotional about that, thinking, well, I've shown him 3 times. You might have to show him 300 times. That's your responsibility. That's what you signed up for. And it doesn't make that horse any less a horse than the one that was easy. They're just all different. So you learn to adjust to fit the situation. Whatever that horse needs, well, that's what you're supposed to do. And if you're waiting around for the horse to just give it all to you just because you have great intentions, good luck.
That's the impractical part.
Yeah, it's not going to work. You have to be there for the horse so you can get him confident. And, you know, some are going to fill in for you, and they'll make you look like you know more than you actually do. They're really talented, some of them, and really bright. and some not so much. But what can you do with a difficult one? What can you do with one that has a hard time putting things together or has a hard time getting confident about anything? To me, that's the measure of a horseman. Because sometimes they're so talented, he would have looked pretty damn good no matter who was riding him.
And even if we're talking about just basic safety, you know, some horses, especially what an amateur rider is going to be able to get along with or would come across, is just going to naturally, you can almost operate that horse on its good graces for its whole life. You might not get everything done, but you can kind of probably get by without really having to support the horse.
Maybe.
Right. So then when you talk about what the process is, so big. I think if folks haven't watched you or watched some of the other guys work through, work through, how would you say it? Work through, I'm just thinking of a regular session, like I was telling you about helping a gal the other day with her horse, and I just, simple walk up to him with a flag and pet him a little bit and kind of get to work.
I mean, it's just there are certain, we always talk about the list. I'm always talking about that. But
you're going to publish that list one of these days.
But there is a certain order, a practical order that you approach horses with based on working from the easiest thing toward the hardest thing that day. The hardest thing in 6 months might be way farther up the list. So you're doing the best you can, starting out with the basics. And if any of those basic boxes can't be checked, don't out of ego just keep going on because you want to be a horse trainer. Get the fundamentals right, step by step, starting from groundwork, preparing the horse, knowing that he's prepared, and being confident you've done all you could for him to be comfortable. And then you work your way forward with that to the point to where the horse is telling you, I'm having a little bit of trouble with this. I'm trying, but I'm having a little bit of trouble. Don't go beyond there. Regardless of what agenda you thought you had for that day, the horse prints the script. And if you're real methodical about that, anybody can get handy with horses if you're thorough and stay humble.
What about a timeline? Because I've recently come across some folks that, have tried pretty hard to reword the slightest try, and,
What do you mean a timeline?
For instance, if like I said, for this horse that, had never seen a flag before, and so we're just going to kind of put it into a flow, hindquarters, forequarters, united circle, and then just get him a little bit confident with the flag. Let's say that was the whole 45 minutes, was to be able to move away from the flag and get confident with the flag, and you kind of put it into some semblance of a dance. So that was the threshold for that day for that horse. The basics, like 0. But at any given point in the list, you're gonna hit upon that, let's say. So, but especially when we come back to a horse not being confident about something. So either, let's say you're chipping away at doing a short serpentine, or I had a horse the other day that would really just was not following the right rein. So, I would go to use that rein and he would just blow out so it just was a process to
right.
Keep presenting it, keep doing it.
Yeah.
But it was a shock to some of the folks that were watching, it's not working because it didn't work right away.
Yeah.
So I learned that from watching you, not that mostly from taking other people's horses, really, but I mean, since I try to be here at the beginning of the year, I have gotten to see your horses at the beginning before they were exposed. Mm-hmm. So getting to see that process, do you feel like you can describe that at all? I mean, just for someone who's maybe,
Well, if I start working on a little project, let's say that was it, that maybe he was just not turning loose, let's say to the right rein. I'm going to finish with something positive happening. And I don't have a timeline. I wear a watch, but I don't look at it when I'm riding a horse. I'm going to get a change. I'm not going to take off too big a bite that what I'm asking for him to accomplish that day, given there's a problem, that I'm unreasonable, that I'm unfair to him, but I'm going to get something accomplished. I will get it to come out the other side. And most importantly, I don't give a diddly damn what everybody thinks when I'm working a horse, because I've seen it come out the other side thousands and thousands of times. I know what the result is going to be before I start, or maybe I would be tentative about it, but I know what the result's going to be. And at this stage in my life, with my experience, they're not qualified to judge me.
Right.
So I don't worry about that. But at the same rate, yeah, someone might watch and they think, well, it's not working because it didn't work in 2 minutes. That's their inexperience talking. But the problem is, for someone like yourself, or even some of the other younger people that are doing this as a profession that are watching this, you'll be judged a lot harsher than I would. Because they know me and they're like, this guy's been teaching for 40 years. They're gonna give me the benefit of the doubt because of who I am and my experience. Yet one of you or some of the other younger people, they might be doing the same damn thing I'm doing, but they'll judge you harsher because they don't have the confidence in you yet. So,
but how can we give that to somebody? I guess what I'm saying is that was a gift that I got from you, is getting to watch, because I didn't know what did that process look like over and over again for the horse to get through, a little trouble would come out, or let's say, a little trouble would come up, and then this happens, and then it comes out the other side. And so I'm always trying to figure out a way to give that to someone without having watched you for thousands and thousands of hours.
Well, as a person who works at this and gets more experience, I'll guarantee you I've never quit on anything in my life. But when I first started doing this, I became introduced to a world of horses I didn't even realize was out there. Spoiled horses.
Right.
Because I was raised around ranches, and those horses worked for a living. They weren't fancy or weren't going to win a horse show, but by gosh, they did a day's work. And there wasn't a bunch of foolishness. They weren't spoiled. They weren't knotheads. They might have been plain, but very functional horses. And then I got out in the world and realized how damn spoiled people get their horses. Well, in those days, it might take me a couple hours working with one on the end of a lead rope to get a change. I never quit, and I always got a change. But 40 years later, what took me 2 hours, I can do in 5 minutes now. And that's just the experience. Not missing the little things and offering a feel that's more fitting to the horse. I've just improved. And if everything goes right, I reckon I'll improve a bunch more before it's all done.
So what would you say? Just don't be alarmed if it takes some time. Just do the best you can.
So what? What were you doing anyway that had value?
I think for us women, though, we get worried that we're doing something wrong to our horses, and it's taking too long, and we don't have the answer, and they're afraid, or we have a lot of drama.
I'll tell you, I might not have put it this way, but I was amused a few years ago when I heard a term that Dr. Deb Bennett used.
Okay.
And it wasn't very well received at her clinic. It was in New Zealand when she was there. And she actually, sometimes, she'll say things that I think, gosh, I'm sure glad I didn't say that. But she was spot on when she told this group of ladies in New Zealand once. She said, "You're all trying to be nurses. Stop trying to be nurses. Become riders, become horsemen." Because that nurturing part in ladies can sometimes get in their way. And it'll make them hold back. It'll make them quit early. It'll keep them from pressing on because of the sensitive maternal nature to ladies. Even though
we love our ponies.
Right. Even though men love that about ladies, sometimes...
And horses love that about ladies.
Sure. Until they disrespect it.
Right.
There has to be that loving your horse. Nobody loves their horses any more than I do. But like Ray used to say, it's not a dirty word to say, I want my horse to be obedient. Same as a child.
And why? Why is it not?
So he can be safe and I can be safe. They have to obey. Same with your kid. If that bothers people or ruffles their feathers when I suggest that your kids should be obedient, okay, start saving your money so you can bail him out of jail. Of course, now you don't have to give him bail anymore either. They just let him out no matter what they do. But my point is...
Put a mask on, though.
Yeah. But you've got to take care of that stuff early so that the horse has boundaries.
So that they feel safe.
So that that's how a horse gets confidence. If you don't present boundaries for a horse, and some of them are mental and some of them are physical. We talk about boundaries in a rectangle, so to speak, a lot. But the boundaries, this is allowed, this is okay, that's not okay. That's how the horse learns to get confidence in you. If you're just riding around willy-nilly and everything's okay with you because, gosh, you just don't want to hurt his feelings, you're not helping the horse and you're not being kind. And he has no leader.
That's the crux of the matter,
yeah.
Right? And you and I have talked a lot about I think it's just really, because you hear some of these guys, and women, apparently, I didn't realize that she had said that, but trying to knock the kindness out of a woman so that they can sack up, man up, be tougher. And you have never made me feel that way.
That's not my point. Yeah, never would be.
But it's so important to not, because what I see in the women that I'm around is they turn off this intuitive part that is like so important to horsemanship, and then they get overly technical or overly hard, and then that doesn't work out. Yeah,
it's like I don't know. It's a touchy subject with some people, but it's like if you're a woman and you have a horse and you want to become a good hand, don't try to be a man. Just be a really good woman. You don't have to be a man. You don't have to act like a man. Nobody is saying that. It's about...
Well, some people do. You don't.
Yeah, maybe so, but that's not my deal. I just want people to understand the whole picture, what the horse needs. I don't even care what the person thinks they need. I'm talking about what that horse needs in order for him to thrive. And
which is ultimately...
there are certain characteristics of everybody's personality, aside from whether it's a man or a woman.
That's true.
Some people have strong characteristics that would really help them with horses, but they might be weak somewhere else. And it's learning, okay, where's the void? Where am I weak as a horseman? What do I need to fill in so that I offer the horse a better deal?
Can I ask you what your weakness was? You don't have to answer.
What was my weakness?
Here, I want to put this in airplane mode before you.
Why, what's that do?
I just don't want it to be messing up our deal here. Okay, we're still rolling. Okay, so the question was, for the cut, the question was, you were just saying how everybody's personality, regardless of whether they're male or female or old or young or rich or poor or whatever, everybody's going to have different strengths and weaknesses that they bring to their horsemanship journey. And I've never asked you this. It's never occurred to me. In your personality, you were doing horses before your personality was formed. That's the problem. Not a problem, but I don't know whether it was as apparent. But you could probably tell me what...
Well, if you're asking what was my weakness,
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to say when,
Right.
because I don't have the same weaknesses now that I did 50 years ago.
I feel like it's too intimate of a question to even ask, honestly. So I don't know.
Well, not necessarily, but I was really, really tender-hearted as a kid, and I was never really scared of horses, but I was just scared of doing something wrong. And I'm sure that had a lot to do with my background because of my dad.
Did he specifically punish you for doing things wrong?
Oh, yeah. And then he would specifically punish you for not having done anything. You know, I mean, he was brutal. But but even that, the trauma of that my brother and I went through, it made my brother hard and tough mentally, and it made me softer and more empathetic. Yet the treatment was the same, so I don't know what that's really about. It probably was already baked into the cake before anything negative happened. So because of that, it was an asset to me that I was really tender-hearted when I started working with horses, but it also made me really lack confidence, and
With horses?
with everything.
Did that apply to confidence with horses?
Oh yeah.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And then you know, a follow-up question might be, well, when did you start to feel confident? Who the hell knows?
Yeah.
You know, that's just something that's gradual with experience. And I always knew that I wanted to be a good hand with horses. And, you know, everybody's on their own journey. But honestly, you know, I have a lot of experience. You know, I've been doing this a long time. And even with me, sometimes, you know, I wouldn't say too often, but sometimes I just think, gosh, damn, as long as you've been doing this, thinking about it, living it every day of your life, you'd think you'd be better than this by now. And I think that. And I'm not saying that just to feign humility, just to impress somebody that's watching this. It's true. There are times when I just think, how come you're not better? And then there are other times where I think, well, gosh dang, that went pretty good.
So when you think about not being better, is it in a moment where, I don't know, I guess I'm imagining that it's not that you're dissatisfied with your horsemanship. Is it? I mean, because the reason I say that is because I think I know that your horsemanship is fulfilling to you.
Oh yeah.
And
yeah.
I say that because I think that there's a lot of us that, and I often say, what's the rush? I've said that a lot lately. Why are you rushing? You only have a horse. It's going to live, you have 1 or 2 horses. They're going to live 20 years. What's the rush, right? But I think part of the rush is to feel that contentment, not because you've won something or someone else said it's good, but because the contentment from within, that the horsemanship is feeding your soul.
You want that feeling of oneness with the horse, and you're kind of anxious to get there, and a lot of times over anxious. Some people are in the business, they have to rush. They might be in the horse show business, so they might have to have a 3-year-old going to maturity, that they have to have a certain amount of stuff going on the horse to keep the lights on. So they're on a different agenda than me, and I'm not condemning them. That's their business, and I don't envy them in any way. I wouldn't want to be a part of having to do that. I can do things on my time. So, you know, generally speaking, 2.5 years, I'm going to have a horse straight up in the bridle from the start, which is, you know, fairly progressive. But
But that's
But
not
I'm
how you
not
measure success, right?
I'm not in a rush, and on the same horse, I wouldn't give a damn if it took him 5 years to be a good bridle horse. It doesn't matter to me, and it doesn't matter that anybody knows. You know, I'll go to brand some calves this spring, and that's the big payoff for me and the horse, because both of us will enjoy it. And if nobody else notices, I couldn't care less. So, but I want that horse to enjoy his work and be good at his work. So I want performance out of my horse too. Some people are so damn afraid of ruffling the feathers at all that they don't do anything, and they just plop around. But that might rock their world. That might be all they want to do, and that's great. They're probably going to be fulfilled a lot sooner than I'll be. But
So you're dissatisfied with your actual performance at times? But not in your horsemanship.
No, sometimes I maybe just, I'll just think, gosh, I'll finish a ride and I'll maybe think of what I maybe could have done different or better at the end of the ride, and I'll just think, why in the hell haven't you gotten that handled a long time ago? But that's just part of it. I just spent 4 months at home, and the entire time when I'm home, I'm not laying on my butt watching TV. I ride every day, because that's my time, my special time every year to study and make me better. I look forward to just having that time by myself to just work on whatever horses I'm riding and see if I can figure some things out, maybe better or more efficient than what I've done in the past. So I know this, when I got home the end of October, I'm a better hand now than I was 4 months later. And I hope that doesn't ever stop, you know.
Well, why would it? But you had fun the whole time.
Heck yeah.
That's the thing, right? I think.
Yeah. It's just that my point is not every day is just going to be.
Sure. And that's super.
You know, great. You know, there's a lot of days that you might leave the barn thinking, you're getting it. You are really getting this figured out. Enjoy it, because it won't last long. It's a little bit like that stupid game of golf. Every once in a while, you'll maybe do something right for maybe a span of 15, 20 minutes, and you'll think, okay, here we go. I'm really getting this. And then it isn't too long after that, you're like, hey, you want to buy these? Want to buy these clips? But for me, golf is an activity. I like being good at anything I do. I don't like mediocre. I think accepting mediocrity, to me personally, is like being dead. Now, for some people, they're content with it, and I guess maybe in some ways I should envy that. But with horses, it's a passion. It's different. I've been driven to do this forever, and Ray Hunt had one of the greatest lines ever. When I heard it, it was another one of those things about Ray that when I heard it, I thought, damn, I wish I'd thought of that, you know. But he told a gal one time, she said, well, Ray, what's your plans, your future with this horse thing? Where do you go with this? And Ray said, I don't know where I'm going, but I'm not lost. And I thought, that's really cool.
This is actually, it is super cool. And I really think that cuts straight to the heart of the amateur rider. That is what the rush is, to get to a place where you don't feel lost and your horse doesn't feel lost.
Well, then it's a matter of enjoying the dance.
Right. Or just the process of, yeah.
Yeah, you just dance a lot, and the more you dance, the better you get. But there is a point that you have to study and work hard to get to where now you're not just scared and trying to survive and judging a good day working with your horse that you didn't have to call the doctor or something, you know. there's a point you get through that, and then it's just the process, if you want to call it that, of you and the horse dancing better.
And would you say then that's when you get into some of the fun, the actual spiritual stuff that is hard to access when you haven't, this is just, I'm just going to say it as imperfectly as it's going to come out, and you just know it's imperfect. That getting to the place, moving from when you're doing something with your horse, that you're like, I'm so sorry, to, you're welcome. Look, I'll help you. And then,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that was a big change for me. When I
Yeah.
was like, oh, I'm sorry, to, I will help you. And,
Yeah.
and when you can, I just feel like most women that I know, most aspiring horsemen that I know, want we want to get to the spiritual part of that. That's what draws us to. We're not making money. We're not usually not caring enough to like really spend all our money on horse shows, you know, but we're chasing this ideal of this spiritual connection, right? But we have to figure out how to support, we have to learn. I mean, it's just truly, you have to learn through hard work, exactly, but also technicalities. And we could go into, you know, that we have to learn how to bring something to the table for the horse.
Well, in the beginning, you have to be mechanically sound. You have to have a good understanding of mechanics. And some people never really transcend that, but it's okay. They're probably at least going to be reasonably safe. But there, as you advance, once you understand the mechanics and what you need to do and what you need to have your horse do, then you start chasing feel, trying to figure out how little you could do to get him to still understand you, and learning to leave a little more up to the horse and allowing him to search and helping him to find it, but not just abandoning him. And so it's a whole different kind of level at some point, that if you stay with it long enough, then it does become more of a, I guess you could call it a spiritual connection, you know, something.
What else would you call it?
Yeah, I don't know. But I would be unhappy if I never ever went beyond just being mechanically good with horses. Yet you'll see some people that are mechanically quite good with horses, and they can get them to do a lot of things, but it's never quite right between them and the horse. But in fairness, not judging anybody, some people aren't into that. You know, they're not interested. And maybe their soul doesn't have that to offer.
Maybe.
Or, you know, there's a lot of reasons why, but
I think
it's an art.
Yeah, and how do you get from, because I guess all I'm saying is we can say just what you said, which we have to go back to you saying, leave as much up to the horse as you can. More and more is what you said, which is so perfect. Learning to leave more and more up to the horse while not abandoning him.
Yeah.
And that it's so delicate of a way that you said that, but that's a whole, like, if you zoom in on that, but not abandoning him part, this is years of study to learn. This is what we're talking about, right? Is how do we support this? So I guess what I'm saying is, how would you, I don't know what the question is. I'm thinking of that we want to hold, I think people have a hint, especially women, perhaps, a hint of the intuition, like we were talking about, that there is something really magical, possible, not just there, but is possible. And it's okay to have that, I think, you know, that nirvana moment in your mind, but we're not going to live that every second. And it is really important. Yes, hold that. Don't say, oh, that's stupid. But then to really see, what does that look like as it shapes up from the beginning to to what's, and just frankly, that's what I didn't get to see the beginning of you with horses. So I see this section of skill, of communion, of whatever it is. But I'm also working from where I am. And I think a lot of people are getting, just start from where you are. But I just can say it's been critical to see, because I can have two things, where I am and the ideal. But being able to watch you work in the gap, not just close the gap, but work in the gap between wherever a horse starts and moving towards it. And of course, getting to watch you with the same horses for 4 years at a time or 5 years at a time, because it doesn't all happen in 1 second.
Right. Yeah.
So again, being able to leave as much up to the horse as you can, that's and yet not abandon them.
Yeah, you fix it up and allow them to work at it, but you also have to be present to make sure they're still working at it. Because if it wasn't that way, well, you could just saddle him up and go sit on the porch and have an iced tea and be like, go, dude.
How can you tell if a horse is working at it?
Oh, gosh, that's a feel thing.
Aha, right. Observation, part of it, right?
I guess a better answer would be, how can't you tell? Yeah, it's so damn obvious, but.
To you now.
Yeah.
And that's the experience thing.
Yeah, because I'm sure in my younger life, some of the horses were really working at it and really trying, and I didn't recognize it at least as quick as I should have or could have. Absolutely. And regretted it. But you live and learn, and then you realize it, and you're like, well, under the circumstances, again, I'm going to give that horse a little better shake.
You think people tend to miss that horses aren't trying?
Yeah.
In what do you, I guess, are people, I feel like, are more apt to, or maybe, I don't know. I was going to say they're more apt to miss when a horse is trying than miss when they're not trying. I guess that's because horses mostly are trying.
Yeah, mostly, but, sometimes you can be so eager to release and reward the horse that sometimes I'll watch it and I'll think, nothing happened. That was a really nice release, but nothing happened. Mm-hmm. So, if you're not careful, pretty soon the horse will get really good at nothing happening. So there has to be conditions when you do release and reward the horse. Otherwise, he doesn't hunt it. He's not going to hunt what you're looking for if your release is just unconditional. You just sort of praise him and back off and take the pressure off, pet him, whatever it might be. He can't wrap his head around what you're after if you're just going to just release him just because you love him. Mm-hmm. So, and that's by releasing for something tangible, that's what helps the horse to work at it. He's hunting it. He's trying to figure out what you want him to do. Then the horse will try to hunt the answer, and then don't blow it when he gets it right. But sometimes people are so damn quick to release, they release for nothing. And then he didn't learn anything.
But it's hard because we've seen you, let's just use you and as an example. I've seen you release for seemingly nothing, even though it definitely was something.
Right, that was just, yeah, but there might be something that I'm kind of picking up on that, maybe someone, if they didn't have a lot of experience, they might think, what was that all about? Why did he release that horse?
And then 2 seconds later, it's like, ta-da, it's all working.
Yeah, well, that's just the feel that develops over time, you know. And
I guess that's what I'm saying.
that comes from having done too much a hell of a lot of the time. And then recalibrating, figuring it out, thinking, gosh, dang, I made that hard on myself. He was trying to get it figured out a long time before that. But, you know, you got to throw a leg over a lot of them.
So how do you comfort a person that's not going to throw a leg over a lot of them?
That's very simple. With my experience, and I used to look at it like this when I'd ride with Ray. If I'd spend a week with Ray, by the time I left, I figured there must be a number. Maybe he saved me 7 years, 8 years, 10 years. On some things, maybe a lifetime of not ever figuring it out on my own. So every time I rode with Ray, he saved me years of just trying to bang my head against the wall and figure it out. And he saved me hundreds, if not thousands, of horses because he'd already lived that experience. And rather than have to struggle through 500 horses to figure out a problem, he'd say, well, why don't you try this? I'd be like, gosh, dang, I can't believe I didn't think of that. But that's what it was for me. Ray saved me time. Because without Ray, I'd have never lived long enough to even get to where I was competent, you know. So, and I think that's probably what it's maybe like for a lot of people that ride with me. They're never going to get the experience, just because life won't allow them to, that I've had. So when they ride with me, I save them time. I save them years.
That's what you've done
for me,
for sure. Because we get to watch the process, and then you get an idea of what that's going to look like. And then, you know, I would, like, my little process, you guys know, I would hang out with you for a weekend and then go home and practice for 5 or 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And then I'd come back. And that is the process, even if you only get to watch video, which we're going to talk about in just a second. But before we're done, I would really love to capture some thoughts on what is actually inside the rectangle. So maybe we could do that last. But do you want to do that first? I was just going to, it's just a good segue in the sense that because not everybody can travel 12 weeks out of the year like I got to, you know, for all those years. But watching it shape up is the way that you get from where you are towards the ideal that we have.
I talk about the rectangle so much, and it's a deep subject we can't probably do justice to today, but having the horse centered, front to back, right to left, side to side, there's a place of absolute perfect balance in a horse, whether he's standing still, walking, trotting, loping, or galloping, or backing up, to where he is absolutely on course, 100%, not 80%, and then the other part's sort of drifting out into space. He's really and truly centered. That is probably the most euphoric feeling you can get on a horse. And it occurred to me this winter as I was riding a young horse around, and the first time I'd ever asked him to give me a soft feel, it occurred to me something that I need to start telling people. Say you're ready to start asking for some vertical flexion, a soft feel. And I realized I never do it with a horse that is not absolutely on course and centered in the rectangle. Then and only then I reach for him and ask him to give. If he's a little bit off course, it could be right or left or forward or back, tempo-wise. You might get flexion, but he's not turning loose to you.
Because he can't. How can he if he's out of balance?
You're not starting from a place of balance. So there are places to where at times in past clinics, I maybe didn't just articulate it just right, but I might tell someone, I wouldn't have asked for a soft feel right there because you weren't going to get it anyway. And they'd be like, well, you told us to work on a soft feel. It's like, yeah, but not there. But if they'd waited 10 yards, it might have been a real good place to ask for it. So I'm going to try to talk about that more in the future, of where they should be asking for a soft feel so they're setting the horse up to be successful, rather than just willy-nilly pulling on 2 reins saying, break at the pole, give me a soft feel. I'd like people to have a better understanding of when it would be ideal for the horse to have you ask him that. And that's all part of that whole rectangle thing.
And would you say then that would be showing them, why are you in a rush?
I'm getting hungry.
If we would just start these things right after lunch, it would be better.
Oh, they're probably sick and tired of hearing from me by now anyway. So.
That's the excuse for I'm hungry. Showing them a soft feel. One thing. Using a soft feel to adjust, make tiny balance adjustments, right?
Yeah.
2 different things.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But
that just depends on the level of the horse, because, first you have to teach them how to give you a soft feel, basically the flexion that you're looking for. You're not going to have any luck using it to center the horse until he's good at a soft feel. Then you'll use that shape also to help adjust a horse. That's why I always tell people in the beginning, until you can walk, trot, and lope and gallop on a loose rein, on course and relaxed, you don't have a damn bit of business picking up on 2 reins.
So what you really mean is in balance.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, if they're comfortable, say you're loping around on a loose rein and they're going right on course, right where you want them to go. You're not having to do a whole bunch of micromanaging. They're really hooked on to where you're taking them. Well, then you can pick up on them and have pretty high expectations when you ask them for vertical flexion, to shorten, to collect. But prior to that,
can I tell you
wasting your
something
time.
about observing you all these years? This is what it looks to me like what you do. You balance the horse in the rectangle, all your lateral work, which
Yeah.
I don't really see you ride other people's horses that you're redoing balance on. I've really only seen you ride horses that are clean, but you could ride a horse out of balance if you weren't as good. But you just show them balance with your lateral work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then a little bit of life, so don't hang on the back of the rectangle. Don't go out the front of the rectangle. Then when the horse is in balance, this is what it looks like to me. You define the front of the rectangle, like say it's this long, then you might just pick up the reins so it's now just a little bit shorter. And then because they're turned loose, their head just hangs there. Is that what it feels like? Because you always say the words that you use are ask for a soft feel. But it doesn't look to me like your horses are doing anything. It just looks like you've picked up the reins and the horse is exactly the same. Just you've shortened the rectangle a little bit so that
Well, the soft feel to a novice is just a matter of seeing the horse tuck his chin. But the soft feel really and truly goes from his nose to his tail, down his legs to his feet. That's the soft feel, all the way to the ground. And but when you first see it, well, you're doing damn good if you can just get him to tuck his chin a little bit and not throw his head everywhere he goes. That's where it starts, and you just build from there. So that in itself, just the soft feel, the understanding of it and the development of it, that is a pretty big topic just on its own. And it's just one little piece of the puzzle, but you got to start somewhere. And at first, it's like a lady asked Ray one time, well, what do I care about this soft feel anyway, Mr. Hunt? And he said, well, lady, if you don't mind his head on upside down where his nose is out and up, don't worry about it. You're good. You're fine.
except then you can't do anything to help balance
He
later.
followed up with it and he said, but if you ever have any ideas of getting him to do something kind of handy with his feet, you may want to give this a try. But she just thought, well, why the hell should I care?
But when you're riding, not for what other people are doing, but when you're picking up like on whatever horse that you might just pick up on the soft field for the first time, does it look like does it feel like the horse is doing anything, or are they just turning loose more?
I mean, are they physically chained, like breaking at the pole?
No, I mean obviously things happen when they give to the. If you shorten the rectangle, things are going to change biomechanically, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, they don't have to make that happen. If they just melt into that, right? That's what it looks like.
Well, all you're doing again is fixing it up and waiting for him to find it. You can't make it happen on your terms by just pulling him in. That's not possible. That's not what I'm chasing. There are a lot of people try to do that, and they're doing something else that I'm not interested in. But no, it's a matter of when you reach for the horse reaches for you.
Okay, but this is very important details, because like you talking about when you pick it up for the first time, when they are in balance, like I always think, I haven't told you this part, I should cut this part. So I always think of the broom, Tom Dorrance with the broom.
Yeah, Ray did it.
Ray did it? I thought I've seen it on video with Tom too.
Tom did it too.
I think
yeah.
I saw it. I think Tom's the one I saw. But I think of myself as the broom handle, and the horse is the hand. But my brain is talking to the hand, but the horse is just keeping me. Like, they learn to, when you move, they're like, whoop, okay, no problem. I'm going to get underneath you. So there's a place of perfect balance where the horse is in balance and you are balanced right over them, right? And you're one thing. This is not how he's thinking of it, but
No.
this is how I think of it.
Yeah, well, and it's okay. It doesn't, I mean, there isn't a right or wrong to it. I just think of two beings together. Both are alive and both are trying to figure out how to go with the other. And like we talked about, when it's right, it is sort of a communion between you and the horse. So he's working at getting with you, but you're working at getting with him too. And then, everybody's happy.
So, when you pick up a soft feel in the moment of perfect balance, they shouldn't have to make any balance adjustments in order to accommodate a shorter rectangle.
No.
Right?
It's just easy. They just shorten.
And it feels like a melting into it. That's what it looks like when you do it. And I've felt that in moments.
Yeah, but that's the moment where the horse is reaching for you.
I see.
He's feeling back to you. Where it's not taking that shock on the end of the rein to get him to bend his pole, that he doesn't let you take all the slack out, that he reaches for you. There is a contact between you and the horse. But
dressage lesson.
Yeah. But nobody said it had to be heavy and awkward and crude. So if there was no contact between me and the horse, then he'd stay in a very natural posture, whatever gait he was at. The shortening of the horse is a result of contact. But maybe my version of it be a little softer than, some other people. But the contact shouldn't be a hardness between the horse and the human. It should be a softness. But everybody's after something different. But that's what I'm after.
Do you feel like when you shorten the rectangle, ultimately the contact is with your core? Like your upper body, because you could sit up, let's say, and if the horse melts into the rectangle that you've shortened,
I really don't think of it like that. I think it's a whole body experience with both.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, I really don't think of it as being isolated in any particular
I just don't see you pull the reins. Like, you have a frame when you ride, and then if you are like lengthening the rectangle a little bit, you just lengthen Like your vibe lengthens of it,
Yeah.
right?
And that's kind of the feel thing. But yeah, no, it's not just the physical. Well, if you pull here, I can't even hardly make my arms do that. It makes me cringe. But, and that's why I always talk about, of course, I always like to talk about Ray, but the way Ray Hunt would reach for a horse was like nobody I've ever seen. They wanted him to reach for them.
It makes me so jealous when you talk about it. I just so jealous.
He was just like, no, he's like nothing I've ever seen, like no one I've ever seen. The feel he had when he'd reach for a horse, oh gosh, they liked it so much.
I won't torture you anymore for tonight, but there's one of the things that you've said to me that I just want to repeat every time I remember it so that it gets printed everywhere is, what were you saying? You were saying, I can't remember the context right this second. I think in a downward transition or something like that. You said, I want it to feel like he's landing like a butterfly with sore feet.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the context? I can't remember the context. Exactly.
Well, I think of that, in terms of just downward transitions. Say if you're going to go a canter walk transition. Yeah, I don't want to feel his feet hitting the ground hard. I want it to feel like a butterfly with sore feet, where you hardly can feel his feet on the ground. But that's just a matter of maintaining the balance in the horse all the way down. That's all that is. So when you do a downward transition, it doesn't mean you've quit moving. You're riding him down, and then when you get to where you've transitioned to the gait you want, you ride. You don't just quit riding. You don't just turn to a big blob on top of the horse. But that's a downward transition for a lot of folks. They might just be riding right along, and then it's like they flip the switch, and right beside the switch it says, sack of crap. And they flip the switch and go, and then the horse does that too. He's just like, whoa.
And the withers close.
Yeah.
And then they try to go forward. I have no life. I've been there. I've lived that cartoon. And the horse is like, well, the bridge is closed.
You slow down with life.
Like a little butterfly. That's why
You
it meant
speed
so
up
much
with
to me. Like the butterfly putting effort into landing softly.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's my favorite. I love that so much. So, oh my gosh, we could talk more. But I just want to get back to the idea that, because we'll wrap this up with talking just a tiny bit about the Buck Channel. But I don't think we're done with either of those subjects. Do you? Like, I think there's more to be said about the soft feel and the reality that vertical flexion is a compression of the hind leg. That yes, that's not the first thing you tell people, but just being real, since this is what we get to do on this. That's what I learned from watching you.
And a lot of this is you can kind of hear it like this, but then, for anybody listening to this, you kind of need to see it for it to really have meaning.
Right.
Otherwise, it's just kind of talk.
And the formula, this is what I'm saying, is the formula is see it, and of course hear the words too,
Yeah,
but
sure.
words are limited. And for those of you guys that watch the Horsemanship Remarks show, that's why I always want to do it on video, because there's so much like gesturing too that has to go into at least trying to mitigate it. But just being real, the way I have done it watching you all these years is, yes, I hear the words, but and it's not like the words are wrong, not to my knowledge, but what I see, and certainly when I get to be here in real life, then there is a feel element to when I'm in, near you and your horse. There's a feel element to it for sure. And side note on that, less so when I'm riding my own horse, because then if I'm with my own horse, unless they're really parked, and kind of it's like, okay, we're parked here, and I'm gonna watch Buck ride. And that depends on the horse I'm on, whether or not I can accomplish that. But for the most part, when I'm riding in class, which is very important to do, because I always want Buck to check my work, because otherwise it could just be talk, Buck needs to see, like, okay, now what is it? Let's have a look at what's actually happening here. And, there's been a lot of years where especially in the beginning, where you would be like, okay, here's where you are mentally in the process. You need to wait to think about those things, and we got to deal with some of these mechanics. And eventually you helped me sort of get them sort of together, right? But when I'm with my horse, I'm listening to the words and trying not to be mad that I can't watch him ride his horse. But that's where I, am in the process. But getting a chance to be here to audit, or auditing one class has been my strategy. Some people I know ride 2 classes in one clinic and then they'll go and audit the next clinic or whatever. But getting to watch, to hear the words as you're talking, or a lot of times honestly just playing music, right? And then there are no words, but to see it happening and to feel it if I'm here. And then go home and practice. And then look again, and then go home and practice. And so I'm so excited that finally we're gonna have the Buck channel, which is fucking awesome, because
Can you say that?
I can bleep it out if I have to, but it's, yeah. But I'm very vehement about this because I do cuss on the Remark Show sometimes if it's very important.
Okay.
Buck never cusses. So, but the times that we have said, Buck, it would be so great to be able to see this, because just to be able to see how does it shape up, because a word is just a word. And then, so tell about the Buck channel.
Well, most everybody's kind of been hearing about it.
Because this is a game changer.
For
this
a year,
is the thing.
or maybe a year and a half.
And I'm responsible for it because Michael and I and a bunch of us were like, wah, wah, wah. Yeah.
So it's going to be a website called the Buck Channel, and on that there eventually will be hundreds, if not thousands, of say 5, 7, 10-minute vignettes on there of just everything I can think of about horses that I've learned. And thinking back, I sure as hell wish this had been something Ray would have left behind for me, after he passed. But the technology wasn't there either to be able to do it. But I'd give anything to have 500 little mini videos of Ray doing things, being Ray, and so I didn't want to make the same mistake. So this Buck channel, I'm up to about 175 vignettes right now, and it's going to launch within the next 2 or 3 weeks, and then I'll just be, from now on till I croak, I'll be just adding to it, putting more videos in there, more things that I think of, and that's information for someone that's maybe just gotten their first horse to someone who's more experienced and everything in between, so all the questions that maybe you'd have that you'd think, well, damn, I've got to wait 6 months before I see Buck. Well, you can go down the menu and odds are you're going to have an answer in there somewhere. So yeah, I'm getting really excited about doing it. And so one more thing, sometime, we don't do this very often because I don't do this very often, this thing here, but sometime, I know you'll write it down to remember, we'll talk about presence. Sometime we'll talk about that.
Yes. And many other things. Well, let's just even be honest about the fact that, like, the reality is you've said since the beginning, what I really mean to say is the deepness in horsemanship is so difficult to talk about because it becomes so intimate.
Yeah,
and then
it can be it can just be a real private thing, how you feel about things, feel about horses, and so private that it's a treasure to you, but you couldn't necessarily put it to words always. But it's something real special, and I know a lot of people, whatever level of riding they're at, that's all there for everybody. It's not just for the select few, you know.
And so we were just talking about how, like, and you've been really encouraging to me about, I mean, frankly, I don't know if I ever have said this to you, but I think without your encouragement, I probably would have just faded it away to just keep for me. But you said, don't let it make you so introverted.
Yeah, that's true. You know, you don't want to. You can love horses in the pursuit of the art, but don't hide there so that all of a sudden you've become this
Hermit.
Antisocial hermit freak of nature. That's not the idea, you know. But the horses actually have made me more outgoing, you know, and doing this for a living. They've made it. They brought out some things that I was really shy and really introverted, and if not for the horses, I'd still be that way. So,
well, I guess that he says he was introverted. It's so hard for me to believe. I think I'm way more introverted than you are.
Yeah, well, you just didn't know me 50 years ago.
But I guess I think that, you know, we would like to do some more things, as difficult as it is to talk about the deep stuff, because the Buck Channel will really handle a lot of the mechanics, and but of course with all the qualities and the feel that you bring to it. But sometimes I think it is good to get a chance to say, talk to me about what that feels like. Because, I don't know, I guess there's some value in giving a not, like, remember the first time, so I just, to timestamp this video, my horse Lil, one of my first bridle horses, that gray thoroughbred, she just passed away a couple days ago, so a week ago. And there are two memories that stand out to me that you were there to be my witness. One time was when we were in Spanaway. She was still in the snaffle pit, and we were doing long walk, slow walk, and all of a sudden that balance came together, and she was a horse that had a high frequency, like her vibration was very high. You know, some horses, some kind of, you know, a lower frequency, and hers, she would feel like she was vibrating all the time. And you taught me not to try to kill that off, just to be a part of it, you know. And suddenly things were dead silent. Like there was an absence of sound or feel or something, and it was a moment of perfect stillness. And if I hadn't had you to say, oh my God, and for you to witness that and be like, you bet. Not that you were saying, yes, I felt that, but just, yes, what you're feeling is real.
Yeah.
That absolute peace that you can have in companionship with another living thing. I don't know. I don't think I've ever had that kind of stillness with another human being. And I have some human beings that I'm very, very close to. I don't know.
Yeah, that sort of epitomizes the title of Ray Hunt's book, Think Harmony with Horses. That's really a great title. I've thought about that lots of times. That's really a neat title for that, because there was a harmony between him and his horse. It was, yeah.
And there's a value in him saying, yes, hunt for that.
Yeah.
Not, you're for sure going to get it, or you're for sure going to get it all the time. And this is the other thing I'll say. Do you remember when, I don't think we weren't together, because I remember it was at home, but I think I asked you about, I was going to see you really soon after that, but with the first time she was the first horse, and I've had horses since I was 12, and this only happened maybe, I don't know, 8 years ago or something like that, when she looked into my eyes, right? Like horses will they'll be looking at you, but not in your eyes. And I was like, oh my, what does that mean? Remember? And then I was like, what does that mean? And you're like, it's just another level of intimacy, is what you said. But what you didn't say is, oh, that's dumb. That doesn't mean anything. Or
It's just a feel thing. It's an acceptance, you know, and it doesn't have to be a, you know, a visual thing. You can tell when your horse is really connected to you. They really want to be there, you know. Yeah.
You want to say the Eddie thing? Not really. Okay, so that was long.
Yeah.
And I'm just getting started. See, this is why I do it at 6:30 in the morning. And
We have 13 minutes to be at dinner.
okay, so is there anything else you'd like to say about Graham? We'll do more, okay? And we're going to talk about presents next time and maybe more of what's in the rectangle.
Yeah, go to the Buck channel.
Yes.
And give me some ideas of things you want me to film, because that's some of the best ideas come from you guys, the questions you ask. And if I live long enough, I'll do them all. So.
Okay. Bye, everybody.